So this is a little bit of review and also some supplemental to some of the other stuff we've been talking about. This is a little bit on the shoulder girdle, and sometimes this is referred to as the pectoral girdle. And for the functional stuff, I wanted to remind everybody that the shoulder girdle, it's made up of collarbone, clavicle, and scapula. So we have those right here. From the top view, you can see those. This will be on the right side of the body. The arm bone is shown attached to that, but it's usually not considered part of the pectoral girdle or the shoulder girdle. It's these two bones. This rests on the torso. So for our functional side, even though I'm not covering it in this little bit of a review piece, the shoulder girdle is going to be very dependent, not 100% dependent, but very dependent on what's going on through the axial body or the axial skeleton or the torso, if you would like. If we're doing something like a downward facing dog or plank pose or in standing, anything that's going on in the trunk and below is also going to have an effect on the spinal position. So if you have somebody who is slouching quite a bit or collapsing the pelvis under and the femur bones forward, the shoulder girdle is probably going to collapse along with the rib cage. And given enough time of that collapse, not only will we see the deformation of the spinal column to suit this long-term collapse, but you can even see a morphing of some of the bones. And we get into that in some of the other conversations. But you can actually see some of the change in some of the anatomy and how the girdle actually holds its shape and how it functions. So long-term collapse is pretty dramatic. And one of the things that we have to do on the yoga mat to correct some long-term collapse, which takes a long time of correcting it. You can't just correct these things quickly, especially if it has to do with the shaping of the bones, but to actually hold the bones in a better position, apply forces to the bones in better positions, and given enough time, they will morph. This is part of our bigger conversation about prana and the movement of bone material, muscle material, and connective tissue material as we experience matter, experience energy in the form of matter, prana in the form of energy, and this is from some of our other lectures. But for today, the shoulder girdle is mostly going to be these collarbone, scapula. See, this is just here, collarbone, scapula. And from the top view, and it even looks a little bit like some very unique suspension, the hard joint for the shoulder girdle to the body is actually up here, the sternoclavicular joint. So it's going to be right up in the front. Sometimes this would be helpful to have an extra arm. Be right here. Most of the musculature that we would talk about for the shoulder girdle is going to be what holds the shoulder girdle by the scapula to the torso, to the ribs, to the spinal column, to the axial body. And we've got a number of different muscles that do that. But they're not, this isn't the conversation about the rotator cuff muscles. So we need to hold the girdle to the axial body or the spinal column with a lot of these big shoulder muscles, shoulder girdle muscles. These are going to be things like the trapezius, like the rhomboid, like the levator scapula. We actually have two sets of serratus muscles, the serratus muscles that are underneath. These are fantastic muscles, by the way, largely misunderstood. And then some other serratus muscles that are more up here, much smaller, much even less understood. So there's a brief intro to the shoulder girdle and the importance of the position of the spine for the function of the girdle. If the spine is way out of position, the shoulder girdle muscles are not going to stabilize or hold the girdle in the most ideal position.